Everybody in your crew identifies as either Big Mac Burger, McNuggets, or McCrispy Sandwich. But you're the Filet-O-Fish Sandwich all day. That crispy fish, that savory tartar sauce, that melty cheese, that pillowy bun. Yeah, you get it. Every time.
And if you love the Filet-O-Fish, right now you can catch 2 of the classics you love for just $6. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
The Penguins are drowning. The Bruins are struggling. What do both of these clubs do? We'll break it all down on today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the music, and you know what time it is. It's time for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Big Time Tuesday edition. And shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Giddy up, my friends, because there is no shortage of awesome news to talk about in the NHL right now, and have a look at just the last couple of days of action because there's special things going on. We'll talk about it. Kaprizov, Hyman going off. This means fantasy takes, and Steele and I have a couple for you. We'll break that down along with Tuesday's bets, but the meat and potatoes. We're taking a look at 2 struggling clubs. One, obviously, Steele, I don't know about your take, but we'll talk about it. I think they're cooked in the Pittsburgh Penguins, and one obviously in the Boston Bruins that now, because of these struggles, we got to take a look at some angles to perhaps augment and boost this struggling roster, and that means their 2 biggest pieces aside from up front in David Pastrnak. It's Swayman and Ullmark. Maybe let's start right there, Steele. You tell me where you want to go because I'm ready to go. Tuesday, baby. Let's get it.
Let's start with the Pittsburgh Penguins because of the road trip that they were just on in Alberta against the Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames. A tough loss like we spoke on yesterday's episode. 4-3 loss with the last minute and a half against the Calgary Flames. They go into Edmonton. They get absolutely pumped 6-1. So let's start there with their season. Sure. What they're going to do in the next 3 to 4 days before the trade deadline. Sidney Crosby, what's going on with him, and Kyle Dubas's acquisitions in the offseason. I mean, we've heard a lot from sports analysts and sports reporters about this has been a complete waste of a year from Sidney Crosby. I completely agree with that take. I had a lot of love and respect for Kyle Dubas for when he was with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I haven't lost it all, but I'm sort of losing a little bit more respect for him every day, every other day now. So, I mean, just all the acquisitions that he made since he started with the Pittsburgh Penguins, it just hasn't panned out. You know, you go out there and get Erik Karlsson. He's been pretty decent, to his standards at this age in his career as well. So he's been okay. No, all the guys that they have right now that they've acquired over that time, Nola Charlie, Riley Smith, just haven't been panning out the way that Kyle Dubas saw. And he's really, he brings in these guys. He's okay. Like, this is the team. Show me what you can do, and then I'll make a decision come trade deadline. Jake Gensel, because of what's happened over the last couple of days, has shot up to number 2 on the trade bait board. So his future with the Pittsburgh Penguins is looming right now. And, it is pretty sad to see that because Sidney Crosby is having such an unbelievable season at his age, 63 points in 59 games. It's not even close to the guy who's in second right now. And it is Jake Gensel, but he's injured. But next in line is Evgeny Malkin with 46 points. He almost has 20 more points than the third best guy right now. So it's very sad to see for the Pittsburgh Penguins. This could possibly be the second straight year and first time in Sidney Crosby's career that he's going to miss the postseason in back-to-back years. So, I mean, it's just confusing on where the Pittsburgh Penguins go because they are only 10 points back and they have 4 games in hand on the Tampa Bay Lightning. So it's a weird place right now.
I have a number of things to say. Number one, let me go off of what you just finished with because, yes, they do. They have a 10-point gap right now on the Tampa Bay Lightning for that final wildcard spot. However, the teams ahead of them, Devils, Caps, and Isles, I think those are 3 teams that are very leapfroggable. Do I think they do it? I'm still leaning towards no. I'm going to say that even if this team makes it into the postseason, and I've said a lot about anything can happen, I don't actually see it for Pittsburgh this year. But the second angle, and the only reason why it might happen, is the only reason why they find themselves here in the first place in terms of being this close, is number 87. And he was asked about this. Is the picture starting to become clear? I think I sent you that clip.
Yeah, you did.
And I'll say this, because this is a tease to bets. Number one, don't piss off Sid, because now he's angry. And I'm just going to say tease to bets for tonight. I feel bad for the Columbus Blue Jackets. However, Pittsburgh is what Pittsburgh is. And Kyle Dubas did his best to bring in some new blood. But you and I said this. Too many new faces in the mix can be bad things sometimes. And look, even those peripheral moves, Riley Smith hasn't worked out. Ricard Raquel has been a huge disappointment again. And sometimes you got to look into Evgeny Malkin. And I know 46 points in 59 games isn't exactly terrible. But when the rest of the team is doing what the rest of the team is, and that's Evgeny Malkin, number one, just in name, and two, the man gets paid big money. I need more out of Evgeny Malkin, and it ties into my final point about the Pittsburgh Penguins deal, because all of these fantasy pieces, peripheral, deeper leagues, whatever, aside from Sid and, Tristan Jarry having, I think, 6 or 7 shutouts, this has been a bit of a graveyard for fantasy value this year, especially with Gensel going out. I'll leave it at this. Even what they are, their special teams need to be so much better. The Pittsburgh Penguins have a worse power play than the Columbus Blue Jackets. They have Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Erik Karlsson. Those 3 guys alone on a power play unit should have them in the top 10 still. And I think that is where I really just need to leave it with this team, because if they can't figure it out with Karlsson quarterbacking their power play and Letang on the secondary power play, come on now. What is really going to go on if this team has to go up against the likes of the New York Rangers in the first round? It's not going to be pretty.
It's not going to be pretty. And I put out a poll after the Edmonton game, or I mean earlier today actually, on what the Pittsburgh Penguins should do. Should they buy or sell at the NHL trade deadline? I believe as of currently, it is 95% that they should sell at the NHL trade deadline. So that's,
and I think they will.
Happen. Yeah, they most likely will. Another team that could also make a couple of moves is the Boston Bruins. They have been slipping and sliding down the standings of late.
Wait, sorry, Steele. Can you say that again? The internet was cutting out there. What's happening with the Boston Bruins?
Slipping and sliding down the standings
right now.
3-2-5 in their last 10. They just lost another big game the other day. We haven't watched it yet. We're recording on Monday earlier before game time, but Toronto Maple Leafs, Boston Bruins, that's a big game in the Atlantic Division. But let's start with the goaltenders, Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a take here. I believe you'll appreciate it. You know me. I'm a huge fan of Linus Ullmark. I believe he's been overlooked a little bit throughout his career, from where he's been to where he is right now. He's 30 years old. He's got 1 year left after this season's over at $5 million with the Boston Bruins. The time for Jeremy Swayman to take the role of number one starter is now. And the Boston Bruins desperately need help down the middle of their lineup. I mean, they've struggled a lot over the last month because of that big gap in the center position. Yep. Brad Marchand's been absolutely invisible the last 12, 13 games. He has 1 goal in his last 11 games. He has 5 points in his last 11 games total. They just don't have that structure down the middle. Pavel Zacha is a good centerman, but he's not a number one centerman. Morgan Geekie, Charlie Coyle, Jesper Bokvist. These are not guys that are going to take you down into a deep playoff run. Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman can, but in order to get that superstar center, or at least some depth centerman, you got to trade Linus Ullmark. You can get a lot of return for him. Again, like, he's got 1 year left on his contract at $5 million. Jeremy Swayman becomes an RFA at the end of the year, so you're going to have to ink him long-term and for a decent chunk of money, because he's been very solid.
Which they're going to have to do regardless.
Oh, they're going to have to do that regardless. And so for me, it's the perfect time to unload Linus Ullmark, because right now the wheels are loosening on this ship, on this car ride. The bolts are loose in the tire. The right back tire is falling off.
Wobbly.
They're barely holding on to the steering wheel. They need to correct this real quick. And And, again, as much as it pains me because I love this player and I love this goaltender, Linus Ullmark is the biggest trading piece for the Boston Bruins. And you can get a lot of center depth and maybe a couple picks or whatever it is. You need to address the center position right now moving forward.
Once again, shout out to the Spit and Chicklets pod, who I believe spoke about this yesterday a little bit. I think it was Biz Nasty that brought up this angle, but it's one that has been thrown out there and discussed for the last 2 seasons when we've really seen, and this is saying something considering Linus Ullmark has the Vezina trophy on his mantelpiece, is we've been talking about how they have 2 goaltenders that they could run with, and maybe one is time to use a trade chip. However, this Boston Bruins team, I think, in a lot of spots, overachieved this season. Last season last season. Charlie Coyle, a really good season out of nowhere. Pavel Zacha has been very solid, but when you look at the lineup, a top line, and this I feel bad for David Pastrnak, and this is just how good he is because he's still scoring at a 50-goal clip, basically. He's playing with Zacha and Danton Heinen right now. My goodness me, they need to do something. I actually don't hate the second line of Marchand, Coyle, and DeBrusk. I think that's just as good as any second line out there this season at least. But if you're going to be going up against the likes of, even let's say at some point it's the Leafs, and you've got third and fourth lines rolling with Yarncroke, Bobby McMahon, and others, and I know those are names that don't even line up to what the Bruins have, they're producing at the most important time of the season. The Bruins aren't. We're going to talk about the rest of it right after the break because I want to hit you with what I think they should do, Steele, with Ullmark, with Swayman. We'll talk about it right after the break. Bets, and of course, we're going to talk about one of Steele's favorites, Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov, Zaki Hyman, and a whole lot more. Today's episode, my friends, is brought to you by Sleeper. It's past the halfway point of the NHL season, and all of your favorite teams are cooking, unless you're the Boston Bruins and Pittsburgh Penguins. We feel bad for you, but regardless of where you're at in the standings, we need to remind you could be winning big playing daily fantasy on Sleeper, especially Daily Fantasy Hockey, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice. All you need to do is pick on studs, whether McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon will record more or less in their Sleeper predictions for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, or more. Use promo code Locked On NHL. You'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Excuse me.
Have you ever seen an NHL player get off a team bus and think to yourself, gosh, I wish I could dress that nice? Well, with Indochino, you can. Indochino makes fully customized suits that don't require a trip to the tailor to get that perfect fit. Recently, I was shopping for a new dress shirt for my upcoming wedding, and when I decided to go with the Hyde herringbone shirt, I was blown away at all the customization options I had. I could change the type of collar, cuffs, and even decide whether or not I wanted a chest pocket, all while being incredibly affordable, especially given the quality of the product I was getting. New colors, fabrics, and outerwear styles are added regularly too, so it's easy to create your next look. Level up your game with Indochino. Go to Indochino.com and use code NHL to get 10% off any purchase of $399 or more. That's 10% off at INDOCHINO.com with code NHL.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. You can also find it on Amazon Fire TV now. They are here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So make sure you make your way over to that YouTube channel, subscribe, check them out also on Amazon Fire TV. Continuing the conversation, though, of the Boston Bruins, what they should do at the trade deadline. I mean, again, like just what I've seen from them over the last 10, 15 games, especially from these 2 goaltenders. I mean, it's just been a terrible stretch for them. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that they have definitely overachieved. They had a really good start to the season. Everybody was firing on all cylinders. But again, like I said, it seems like the wheels have kind of loosened a little bit and they're starting to lose traction right now. Over the last 5 games for Jeremy Swayman, he's allowed 3+ goals in the last 5 games. And the same goes for Linus Ullmark. They've had some pretty tough stretches, especially for Ullmark. But like I said before, 1 year on his contract at $5 million. You're going to have to re-sign Jeremy Swayman, who's an RFA at the end of the year. He's still 30 years old. Yes, you get a lot of return from Linus Ullmark because he has that value now, and he's that type of caliber goaltender. You get a ton of return from Linus Ullmark, and a team that can definitely just re-sign him after the end of his last year contract.
I think I'm just looking at it like this. If you're the Boston Bruins front office and the season ended in the nature it did last year, and you're this close again, look, this struggles over the last couple of weeks. It's real, but they are still right there knocking on the doorstep for the top spot in the Eastern Conference. So I would look at it this way. And they obviously are much more astute hockey minds than you and I are, Steele, and they know what their team is. If you're believing in it, if you believe that bringing in one or two pieces makes this team good enough to beat the likes of all the teams that we've been talking about. I already mentioned the Rangers, but I mean out west too. Oilers, Stars, Canucks, all those teams, Colorado Avalanche, whoever you think are a cup threat. Is that going to take your team over the top? Because then you do immediately look at moving one or the other of these guys. In my opinion, and I've talked about this, so I'm going to agree with you on the Swayman take. I think he is the goaltender that they should run with. And that's crazy saying this because Linus Ullmark has the Vezina. But it's just how I look at things, and you made the point of the contracts, which also works in a big favor for getting the most and capitalizing on Ullmark's value because he makes it so much more attractive with that second year under contract if he does get dealt. So either way, the Boston Bruins have to play a lot better. They need more out of guys like Marchand, and they hang their hat on being a defensively stingy club. They're allowing far too many shots on net, up to over 30 per game, Steele, and they are allowing more goals per game, and that's just not how this team wins game, and it's not how it's built because they don't have the offensive output to run and gun, especially not when it comes down to even going up against teams like the Leafs. We don't know what Monday holds, so maybe I just really put my foot in my mouth. However, let's talk quickly about Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov and Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman we've covered a little bit. So let's focus on Billy over here because, look, 29 goals in 55 games, so let's call it 30, is absolutely nothing to shake a stick at. It's solid. It's elite. I just don't think it's even close to his output in terms of what he can really do. And now you're being able to see it a little bit over the last stretch of games. I think he's got something like 8 or 9 goals over the last 6 or 7 games. It's got to be close. Anyway, this is the Kaprizov that we all knew and love and that I was ready to throw out there as like a second-round draft pick headed into this fantasy season in terms of what I expected, Steele. But now he's really starting to cook. Hit me with your take on if you think he's enough to take this team to the postseason, because personally, I just don't see it. But if he continues to do special things, the Minnesota Wild are not out of it, not yet. They're only 8 points back, and they could very much make a little run here.
9 goals in his last 8 games, I believe it was. So
thank you, sir.
He is scoring at a good rate right now. He has a few hat tricks over that last stretch as well. Hat trick against the San Jose Sharks. They are a little bit injured right now, so there's no question to that. They have Marcus Johansson, Matt Zuccarello missed last night's game against the San Jose Sharks. Pat Maroon, Marcus Foligno, Jared Spurgeon. So they have some regulars out of the lineup right now, and it's going to be tough trying to win these games, especially a team against. When you go up against the San Jose Sharks, those are 2 points you need to get every single time. I'm just pulling up their schedule right now, but it's going to be tough for the Minnesota Wild to catch up to the Nashville Predators, the Los Angeles Kings, and I'm even going to throw the Calgary Flames in there right now because of the way they're playing. These are big games that they can't afford to lose. They really need to go. I mean, they've got 20 games exactly remaining in the season. I personally believe they have to win at least 15 of those just to make the postseason because of how the Nashville Predators, Flames, and Kings are playing right now with a few others. St. Louis Blues as well ahead of them. But, there's a few games this upcoming month. They've got 2 against the Arizona Coyotes, 2 against the Anaheim Ducks, another one against the San Jose Sharks, 2 against the St. Louis Blues. Those are all winnable games. You need to win those 2 points. Yeah. And a lot of that pressure has been on Kirill Kaprizov, and he's been really great over the last stretches of games, like you mentioned with the goal totals. But again, these are crucial 2 points for the Minnesota Wild, And I understand where you're coming from at the beginning of what you're talking about with, it's nothing to slouch on, but I would expect a little bit more from him.
Yeah.
Again, it's the team he's playing for right now. And I've said this all
sure.
season long. They need to somehow entice superstars or acquire a superstar in a trade to really make this team go to that extra level.
Same old song and dance, really, with this team.
It is.
So, and here's the thing. And I'm going to leave it at this with Kaprizov, because when I look at his numbers across the board, this is still a really solid fantasy season, right?
Oh, yeah.
66 points, 195 shots, 26 PIMs, 7 game-winning goals. Ice time is a career high, plus 21 minutes a night. And, look, I really think this kid can be right up there in the conversation along with the tier below Austin Matthews, because there's no one in his conversation. It's Austin Matthews and it's everyone else below in terms of straight shooters.
Yes.
But Dollar Bill right here is right there in that 1B category when he's going, and right now he's going. Zach Hyman, I wouldn't put in that category in most seasons. But this year at 42 goals, it's something that you and I should talk about right after the break very quickly before we get to Tuesday night's bets and get a little paper in that pocketbook.
Yes, sir. We will get over to Zach Hyman. Real quickly, I just want to say this. Kirill Kaprizov has had back-to-back 40-plus goal seasons. He has missed 7 games this year, but he could still potentially get up to 40 goals again.
Missed 15 last year, still hit 40.
Yeah. So he definitely can get up to 40 once again, and that's the type of caliber player that you get from Kirill Kaprizov. You just got to add those pieces around him now and really build up this team in Minnesota. Let's get over to Zach Hyman and Big Time Bets very, very quickly. But first, this episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers.
What's up, guys? Trey Matthews of Locked On Devils here. And let me tell you about Discover Debit Cash Back. Wings for the game? Boom, cash back. New lucky jersey? Boom, cash back. Even a last-minute ice run could score you some cash back when you use your debit card. And yes, we said debit card. With Discover Cashback Debit, everyone can earn cash back on everyday purchases. Look, in sports, it's hard to predict who's taking the W, but you know what's a guaranteed win? Discover Cashback Debit. Oh, and did I mention there are no fees, period? I'm telling you, this one is a real game changer. Check out transaction eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashback debit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, and leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. We're going to get to big time bets very, very quickly, but let's touch base on Zach Hyman having the best year of his career with the Edmonton Oilers. Absolutely killing it right now. 42 goals on the season, and he doesn't seem like he's going to stop anytime soon.
Here's my first take on this deal, because you and I spoke about, not to shift gears to another player, but you mentioned Zach Hyman, you're going to mention Connor McDavid, because I said at the start of this year, given what we saw from McDavid last year and really kind of step out as a shooter for the first time in his career, I think he established a goal high last year with his shooting
36
totals and his goal output. And I said to you at the start of this season, and I know exactly where I'm going with this one, is you said it's okay because McDavid is being more of a playmaker. He is distributing. He's setting it up for his teammates to a point where it's just a tap in. That is Mr. Zach Tap-In Hyman. No, and look, nothing to take away from Zach Hyman. That's not what this preamble is about. It is more so about really what is forming chemistry on this top line, and it is McDavid doing special things, and Zach Hyman is having a great season. There is no doubt about it. But here is one of those early angles. And look, 36 goals last season is 36 goals. But if he does keep going at this clip, people are going to remember it. And he is going to be overdrafted next season, Steele. I'm telling you. Because just look, if he even finishes with 49 goals, let's say he finishes with 44, 2 more, which I think he's going to finish with a ton more.
I think he'll get to 50.
There is no, me too. And that's just how good him and McDavid are playing together. So I'm not here to take away from him. I just wanted to leave this point. That be wary of how much you over-invest into Zach Hyman on such a big stepping out year when in his career, and a really solid one, the previous highs stuck around 25, 27, and then previously 18. Last year, of course, 36. Good one. I'm just saying, be wary on the fantasy side of things. His impact on the ice, his ability to help his team win, all very much for real. Just don't overreach on him next fantasy draft. But don't worry, Steele and I will be here to break all of that down as we get closer to draft season.
Exactly what we do here, baby, on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And just to finish up this conversation, I mean, it is glaring to see some of these stats since he's been with Edmonton. But just from last year, he finished with 47 assists. He only has 19 assists this season. So that's go. That's the difference we're seeing from last year to this year. Is last year we were seeing Connor McDavid shoot the puck more. He had 60 goals, 60 plus goals last year. And now, again, like I said, going into this year, pass the puck more, get back to what you do so specially with your teammates, setting them up for just tap-in goals, like you said. And now we're also seeing that from Zach Hyman. He had more assists than goals last year. This year, he's got more goals than assists this year. 42 goals, 19 assists, 61 points. It's absolutely incredible to see. I will say, though, on your take about don't draft him too highly. I mean, when you have a player, again, like these are career highs from Zach Hyman. You know, the same could be said. A lot of people say the same. I don't want to name drop this guy.
You're going to say JT Miller, aren't you?
I'm going to say JT. You know, people overvalue JT Miller, but when you're playing with that type of caliber player, when you're playing with McDavid, and he's doing this now on back-to-back years, I can see where the value can skyrocket and people might jump a little bit ahead, but he's still got to be, you know, up there at least in the top 3 rounds.
I'm going to say I would put him, given what he has done over the last 2 years, since we're going so deep down this conversation, me personally, anything above the 3rd round is too high, and anything below the 4th is far too low. So if that makes any sense, I think 3 and 4 makes sense. Yeah. I guess I would just say, don't get overly invested into a flashy number like goal total when we just saw it fluctuate. That's all I want to, I guess, leave it at. And I'll leave it at this too, Steele. I want to make some loot this week. And that's the most important thing, because right now, Tuesday's 9-game board, I'm looking at it like this. The next, let's say, 2 weeks, you know, the deadline will be the deadline on Friday. By the way, tap in. We're going to have all that coverage, all the big deals, the implications, what the trade deadline means for your fantasy squad. Steele and I will be breaking it all down at the end of the week, start of next week. Don't miss an episode. However, I think you're going to start to really see these like bottom feeding teams get dealt with. And I know the San Jose Sharks gave the Dallas Stars real trouble on Saturday night, and they have actually head to head. I think they're just going to start to see some separation, and the contenders separate from pretenders. And this goes right into pick number 1. Dallas is back against San Jose, but on the road in San Jose, Tuesday night, Steele. Man, that was a good little segue. We're getting good here. Dallas is going to be one of those teams that I'm not backing down from. Chris Tanev could be in the lineup tonight. It's probably unlikely, but it's just good mojo going around Dallas right now. Head-to-head, I alluded to the fact that San Jose gives them fit, Steele. 5-5-0 Dallas is against San Jose over the last 10, so it's an even split. And they just won by only 1 goal in a shootout fashion.
Yeah.
So you might say, why are you going Stars puck line? Have a look into the numbers and tell me why. San Jose is doo-doo. Dallas is rounding into form as a cup contender, and I'm leaving it alone. Stars, puck line, as my first pick, Steele, and I'm feeling quite confident in this one.
I mean, I usually feel confident with that one too, but I took the Stars puck line the other day. It did not hit for me, but I'm hoping it hits for you going into
I'm sorry.
Tuesday
that was
night.
A tough spot.
It was a tough spot, but hey, I'm rooting for you. I'm hoping for all
Thank
the
you.
best. And obviously, as the better team against one of the worst teams, you got to take the puck line in this situation.
I hope I don't get burned, but hey.
The money line is not going to have any juiced odds whatsoever. No. My first pick, though, I'm taking the Panthers on the money line against the New Jersey Devils. The Devils have just been real bad of late, especially in the crease or in the blue paint. Nico Dawes has just not been great. They've been going back to him, but he's still letting in a couple of muffins of goals. Florida Panthers money line -114 against the New Jersey Devils. They're 4-6-0 in their last 10 games. So I like the odds right there for one of the best teams. Second pick of the night, I'm also taking the Islanders on the money line against the Blues.
Interesting.
At -154. I think I believe the Islanders are starting to turn things around. I swear for 2 months in a row, consistently their last 10 games were always like 3-3-4 or 3-2. You know what I mean? Like, it was just really weird. They were losing a lot of games in overtime. They're currently 5-3-2, so it's at least a positive above 500 number in their last 10 games. I'm taking the Islanders on the money line -154 at home.
I'm liking it, Steele. It's a little bit bold, but I like that you've dug into the angles. And you and I have discussed a lot lately how, look, trends, head-to-heads, these are the numbers that we have to bring up when we're talking about investing money. But sometimes also just knowing what's been going on the ice for these teams over the past couple of games and watching them tells you a lot to go along with these stats. You can never base decisions when it comes to wagering your money solely on one angle. That's not what the good handicappers do. You got to cover as many as you can, including the odds. And that's why I like you're bringing up some good ones. I'm taking a look at the Seattle Kraken into Winnipeg. Winnipeg has played a lot better, Steele, over the last 8 games. Sorry, let's call it 7 games. Aside from losing to Dallas 4-1, they've reeled off 6 consecutive victories, beating Minnesota, Chicago, and Arizona. So, okay, maybe not too great there, but then a nice 5-3 victory against the Canes and a neat and tidy 5-2 dub against the Buffalo Sabres, who have been playing a lot better of late. And speaking of those head-to-head numbers, in 6 career games, franchise record, history, whatever, they've only played 6 times. Winnipeg has 5 dubs out of 6 games. Give me the Jets on the money line. That was almost my lock of the night. But I'll hit you with my lock of the night after you hit me with your take on the Jets and your own lock of the night, because I alluded to it. Do not piss off Sidney Crosby.
Okay, well, first of all, I love the Jets on the money line in this instance between the Kraken. Like you said, 5 out of the 6 wins going the Jets' way. My lock of the night also comes from this game. I'm taking the under 5.5 in this matchup. I
love it.
The last 3 contests have been 3-2 exactly. In those 6 games, 4 out of the 6 have been under 5.5. So I'm taking the under in this matchup between the Jets and the Kraken as my lock of the night.
Feeling it, Steele. Man, let's have a big old night, because I'm not backing down from this one. I mentioned the Sidney Crosby comments. Whoever that reporter was is definitely regretting asking that question, because you could just feel the heat coming off of Sid's eyepiece.
Steaming.
He was ready to take that guy out at the shin, but he's too classy and he's going to let his play do the talking. And that's why I feel bad for the Columbus Blue Jackets, because you know me and the numbers, Steele. How about in 39 career regular season games for Sid against the Columbus Blue Jackets? 58 points. I'm not going Sid anytime point. I'm going Sid over 1.5 anytime points. He's going to have a goal. He's going to have an assist. He might have a goal and 2 assists. The Penguins are not a great team. They are not a playoff-worthy team, but what they do have is veteran leadership, and that's been put to the question in a very big way over this poor play. And I think if they don't respond against the I don't know what the rest of the season holds. I have no idea. I think they miss out. But I do know against the Columbus Blue Jackets at home, after what's been going on, this is a really good spot for this team to respond. And I'm going to look to the only guy who's been doing it all year and the best player of this generation in number 87.
I thought 100% you were going back to the Sidney Crosby anytime assist, but I'm loving the over 1.5 in this matchup.
That's a lock of the night.
Our boy Troy might not be feeling the same way. He's probably got Columbus.
Shout out to Troy, though. Solid dude.
Shout out to Troy. He's amazing, always interacting and commenting on the channel. We appreciate you out there. We appreciate all of our listeners out there as well. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Again, make your way over to Locked On Sports Today's YouTube channel, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. You can also find it now on Amazon Fire TV, so make sure you go check it out. Again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.
Everybody in your crew identifies as either Big Mac Burger, McNuggets, or McCrispy Sandwich. But you're the Filet-O-Fish Sandwich all day. That crispy fish, that savory tartar sauce, that melty cheese, that pillowy bun. Yeah, you get it. Every time.
And if you love the Filet-O-Fish, right now you can catch 2 of the classics you love for just $6. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.